Well, good morning. Got a little Bible study for us this morning. Something I've been thinking about over the past week, and I worked on this Bible study. I'd heard this phrase before, and I don't think I ever heard a message or a Bible study on it, but I know I heard the phrase. Might have been used in a message. I can't remember, but the question is, if Christianity were outlawed and made illegal, could you be convicted of being a Christian? And in many countries it is definitely illegal. The number one country that that enforces it, even with crucifixions and torture, North Korea is the number one country. But there's others that have the same issues. Anyway, let's say that here in the United States, the unthinkable happened, and being a Christian was a crime, even a capital offense. Far-fetched, you might think, but there are countries around the world that's a fact. For the purpose of this study, we'll be using the standard of the American justice system, and we're going to talk about reasonable doubt and the definitions of it, because if in a court setting, that's what would be held up to. The key aspects of reasonable doubt. The definition: it is a doubt grounded in logic and common sense, arising from the evidence or lack thereof. It is the level of uncertainty that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate before acting in a matter of importance. The burden of proof. The prosecution bears the burden to prove every element of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is presumed innocent and does not need to prove their innocence, ideally. The threshold. The standard is intentionally high to prevent a conviction of innocent individuals, often interpreted as requiring a 98 to 99% certainty, whereas civil cases only require 50% and a preponderance of the evidence. It's not all possible doubt. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not require absolute certainty or beyond all possible doubt, because all human affairs are subject to some potential, imaginary, or speculative doubt. The acquittal necessity. If the jury has a reasonable doubt, they must acquit. If they are firmly convinced of guilt, they must convict. And it must be unanimous. All 12 jurors must agree in a capital case. Let's say that you were arrested with several people that were suspected of being Christians. Now keep in mind, this is a capital offense, meaning the death penalty is on the table if convicted. You've exercised your right to remain silent. You might think, well, if they're silent, they aren't a very good Christian. Shouldn't you be bold and say, yes, I'm a Christian? And I imagine we all would like to think that that's the case, that we would act that way, but I'm not sure we all would. Not sure I would. Example is Peter. Remember Peter? He denied Christ 3 times. In Matthew 26, verse 69 through 75, it reads like this. It says, "Now Peter sat outside in a courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, 'You were also with Jesus of Galilee.' But he denied them all, saying, 'I do not know what you are saying.' And when he had gone out to the gateway, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, 'This fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth.' But again he denied with an oath, 'I did not know the man.' And a little later, those who stood by came up and said to Peter, 'Surely you are one of them, for your speech betrays you.' And then he began to curse and swear, saying, 'I don't know the man.' And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the word of Jesus, who had said to him, 'Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.' So he went out and wept bitterly." You imagine how that felt. And I imagine we're not a lot different from Peter. Peter even knew Jesus personally, had seen the miracles. He'd even cut off the ear of one of the guys that came to arrest Jesus, and said, "I'm with you, Lord, till the end," And But he didn't just remain silent. He vehemently denied it. So it wouldn't be a far stretch to think you and I would at least keep silent and plead not guilty. Back to the North Korea thing, they say they're compelled to worship the supreme leader, the president there of North Korea. And the Christians are so scared that when they pray to Jesus, they have to pray with their eyes open, and even their family members, their wife, their children will turn them in, and that's a terrible fear to live with, wouldn't it? So anyway, you've decided to plead not guilty and remain silent. So they've executed a search warrant on your house in search of more evidence. And you know, when they present evidence in court, and I know we're kind of jumping around here a little bit, and this is not exactly how the proceedings would play out, but this is kind of going to give you the thought to think about this kind of stuff. So they went to your house, they executed a search warrant, and Exhibit A ended up being one dusty Bible that was located in a dresser drawer in relatively new condition. They found Exhibit B, a cross was hanging on the wall. In Exhibit C, there was a framed picture of Jesus in the basement. In Exhibit D, there was a computer found that had a Bible app on it, but after the text went through it, it showed that it hadn't even been accessed. However, there were several social media accounts with explicit content on them. What do you think about that kind of proof, whether you're a Christian or not? These are fictional examples, but you get the point. Then comes the witnesses. What would they say about you? Your co-workers, your neighbors, your spouse, your kids, your friends, the person at the drugstore, the one at the grocery store that you interact with. How would they testify to your character and whether you would be a Christian or not? We could go on and on, but let's see what the Bible has to say about how to determine if you're a Christian. In Matthew 7:16 through 20, it says, "You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit. A bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them." In other words, if you're a Christian, you aren't going to be out at the bar room brawling or dropping it like it's hot in the club or cheating on your spouse or having weird ways with your business. You're not going to be skirting laws and in other words, cheating people in your business and your day-to-day work. In Luke 6:43, he says, "For a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. A good, healthy tree will produce good, healthy fruit. Your actions will show where your heart is." The next scripture tells us that not everyone who claimed to be a Christian will be in heaven. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom." This is Matthew 7:21 through 23. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'" Now, my wife and I did this Bible study together last night. We talked about the lawlessness and tried to figure out exactly what they were talking about. And we think that it boiled down to basically being disobedient to what the Lord has for us to do. And it reminded me that this reminded me that, like in our case here, and it may well be in our case here, like it was for Jesus when he was crucified, it was the so-called religious leaders who insisted on his death. They were the ones. It wasn't their justice system. The religious leaders were requiring this to be done, and these so-called religious leaders may influence our cases. The last verse sums it up. In verse 34, this is how they would know beyond a reasonable doubt whether you were a Christian or not. This is Jesus speaking in John 13, 33 through 35. Little children, I shall be with you a little while longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, where I'm going, you can't come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Think about your life. Could you be convicted of being a Christian? Or would the jury find reasonable doubt? I know that I personally have some stuff to work on. And I hope this sets everybody to thinking about their own self. You know, this isn't for any one person that I'm sending this out to. This initially was for me, and then my wife and I did it together last night, and we realized that we've got some stuff to work on. And I'm hoping that each and every one of you finds something in your life. Well, hopefully you don't have anything, but I'm pretty sure you all do, just like me. But God bless you all. I hope this finds you all in good health, and be blessed, my friends. Till later.